Hi, it's Sylvester, and a few years ago I wrote a short story called Deliberations of a Bad Apple. And I would like it if you would read this short story. So I'm going to put a link to it in the description down below. Please feel free to read it. It is a story about classism and wealth gaps and privilege and how it's difficult to maintain relationships between people of different socioeconomic statuses, and it's about breaking the law. Which, I'm not saying you should break the law. The things that the characters do in this story are not things that I'm promoting, but the characters do break the law. Spoiler alert, the two main characters are selling pharmaceuticals illegally. So don't do that. Don't sell pharmaceuticals. Don't sell drugs. Don't do anything illegal. Don't break the law. But that is what the story is about. Basically, the main character is this really, really rich, really privileged girl, this really privileged teenage girl who's best friends with this guy who's very, very poor, and how the relationship kind of is very strained because of the wealth gap, and they're both selling pharmaceuticals together, and just read it. Just read the story. I'm not going to say a ton of stuff happens. It's not like an adventure novel. It's not like action packed by any means. It's mostly just an exploration of this rich girl's life and the guilt she feels for being wealthy, but also she struggles with mental health problems. Oh, spoiler alert, but also content warning. She does suffer with an eating disorder, so there's that. But she's just like this teenage girl struggling with teenage girl stuff on top of the fact that she is, trying to maintain this relationship with her best friend who is a lot less wealthy than she is and a lot less privileged than she is, and how she's also breaking the law and having to face consequences for that, and her relationship with her dad. I think her dad, in my opinion, turns out to be probably the most likable character in the book. Like, there's not a ton of character growth, except for the dad. Like, I feel like the dad is the one who gets the most character growth in the end. Like, I'm spoiling it. I'm spoiling it. Just read it. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's great, or that's well written, but I like it, and I just would like it if some people read it, because I worked hard on it, and so, there's that. Yeah, the main character, she's not the most likable, so if you find yourself just really annoyed with her, just know that that was on purpose. She's supposed to be a little bit, like I said, she's a rich, privileged girl who sometimes doesn't always know her privilege, and I feel like if I've always wanted to write a sequel to, not always, because well, no, I guess always, I guess since writing it I've wanted to write a sequel written from the perspective of her best friend, because I feel like he kind of it comes off as like in I don't want to spoil it. I really don't want to spoil it, but like his side of the story would be profoundly different from her side of the story. Just the way things look from where he's standing, from where he is at with how little privilege he has. Because I feel like he also kind of comes off as quite unlikable in this story. But when you try to see things from his perspective, imagine being this very, very poor kid who has to sell drugs to support his family, who's best friends with this girl who's like super wealthy and like drops thousands of dollars on clothes just for fun, and like she's just very, very privileged and sometimes isn't always aware of her privilege, and like it's really frustrating from if you look at it from his perspective. But from her perspective, he kind of comes off as this like bad kid who is like a bad influence on her, and so I kind of did make it so that it does kind of seem like this kid who's in poverty is a bad influence on this rich girl. And I feel like that's kind of not what I was aiming for, because in the end it was her decision to break the law. It was her decision to do what she did. She wasn't forced into it by any means. But from her dad's perspective, certainly it's like, I had this daughter who was just, she was straight A student, she was doing really well, and then all of a sudden she starts hanging out with this guy who's in poverty, and she starts selling drugs. And like, from the father's perspective, this kid who's in poverty is like the bad guy. But again, when you think about it from his perspective, from the dude who's in poverty, his perspective, it's like, he's definitely not as bad of a guy as he gets painted out to be, or as he gets made out to look. Whatever. I'm spoiling it. You should read it. Please and thank you. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.